Okay, let's go.
Vegetarian.
How is the mood today?
The mood today.
Are you excited?
Woo.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
I think that was all the excitement.
Yeah. We're gonna get deep in this episode, or deeper than before, at least. Today we're gonna discuss some literature. Wow. We're going to talk about the novel The Vegetarian, which is written by Han Kang, and it was published in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
It is an award-winning novel that in 2016 won the International Booker Prize. And it is very often described as sort of a great piece of contemporary Korean literature. And I have read it, and you have read it, Dino. Please tell us what the book is about.
So The Vegetarian follows Young-hee and her socially induced psychosis. And it kind of philosophizes on social pressures and expectations connected to our bodies and what we can and must do to escape those. It's an exploration of desperation and what it actually means to be alive and to live in society. What it is we are actually living for, if it's ourselves or if it's for others. So after having a dream, Young-hee stops eating meat, which the people around her can't really unite with the image of her that they had before, and therefore they react with disgust and anger towards her. The reader only gets to know Young-hee through the words of her husband, her brother-in-law, and her sister, something which I think really enhances this kind of symbolism of her being a silenced woman, since she's not even allowed to tell her own story. But I'm sure we're going to talk about this more later. The pressure from her family to start eating meat again and consequently becoming like that person she couldn't stand again makes her attempt suicide. Her husband leaves her, and staying with her sister's family makes her calmer, and she starts to find her way back to herself. But then her brother-in-law hears of the skin imperfection that she still has from when she was young, and he becomes obsessed with the idea of painting flowers on her and making a video of them having sex. Just like that, Young-hee is once again seen just as a body, an object that someone else can use however they see fit. After her brother-in-law getting his way, she becomes sicker than ever, and her sister places her in an asylum. Young-hee is now convinced that the only way to be free and to stand strong and stable in this world by herself is to become a plant, or to become a tree, more precisely. She hears somewhere that a tree actually stands with their feet in the air, and her wish to stand on her hands like a tree in a world where everyone else is standing on their feet is kind of a striking image of someone wanting to live outside of norms and expectations in society, but always falls down because of the environment and the people around her who keeps pushing her down. The book ends with her sister leaving Young-hee in the hospital with the knowledge that she will die there, and that there is nothing she can do about it. Her sister asks herself what would happen if the world and everything that we act according to turns out to be a dream, and what would still be important if that happened. Are you happy with that summary? Do you want to add something?
Good summary. Yeah. No, I mean, Han Kang has explained in an interview that like the idea for this book originally came to her through an image of a woman turning into a plant, and she wrote a short story in 1997, which was called The Fruit of My Woman, where a woman literally turns into a plant. But then several years later, she sort of reworked this idea in a darker and more fierce way, as she said. And then she wrote The Vegetarian. So if you're interested in that theme of people turning into plants, then also read The Fruit of My Woman. Well, the first thing that I thought about when reading this book was, what the fuck is a video artist?
The very first thing.
No, because I mean, right before I read The Vegetarian, I read another Korean novel that is called, the English title is I Have the Right to Destroy Myself by Kim Yong-ha. And in that novel, there's also a person that is a video artist, a man, that finds a woman, a muse, that gets naked and drunk and then paints on a huge canvas using her hair as a paintbrush. And then I read The Vegetarian, where there's a male video artist painting flowers on a woman's body and then having sex with her, which was the scene in The Vegetarian. So I'm like, what is the deal with video artists sexualizing women?
I have another question. Like, was it the drunk girl who used her own hair to paint on the canvas, or did he just... She was drunk and passed out, and he just took her hair, or like used his superhuman strength and used her like a paintbrush?
No, she used her own hair, so she was like on all four, just creating art, I guess.
And he was doing what? Like just sitting there?
Filming
watching,
her.
Filming, okay.
I mean, I'm not very knowledgeable in the arts. So yeah, what is the deal with video artists? It's, you're too lazy to make a painting, so you're just using a video camera.
Are you gonna say that about photographers as well? Then
I don't know. No, photography is different. But I don't get... It's like video art a thing in Korea? Like, why is it multiple novels?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I guess, like, in these... I haven't read the other book that you said, but I would guess that they are playing with this kind of concept of a porno. Where does the art stop and become exploitative? Is that a word? I guess that they want to, at least in The Vegetarian, it's very clear that Han Kang wants to problematize like the male gaze on women in Korean society. That is very clear. I mean, he himself keeps telling him, telling himself that he is just doing a piece of art. This is an artwork. This is like an expression of my creativity, of my ability to create something new. Whereas it is quite clear for everyone else that this is something where he exploits her and her insecurities and her mental instability.
It basically turns into sexual abuse. So
exactly,
and rape.
Yeah, which one could say that a porno is as well.
I remember this part of the book as it made me feel sick, like to my stomach. Even if the book is not written from Young-hae's perspective, you're still, as a reader, like taking you're her in a way, or at least that's how I thought of it. And it felt like I was being used by this perverted video artist. He's like, you're my muse. I'm like, I didn't ask to be your muse.
But also, I don't think that... I mean, I didn't see Young-hee as someone who was able to make her own decisions. Like, where the book starts is where she can't, like, think clearly anymore. Is where she enters this kind of psychosis, if we can call it that. But her illness, she's ill, basically, like, from the start of the book until the end. And therefore, he is... I mean, him kind of talking her into doing this is wrong, because he is talking to her in a way that, like, he's talking to a person who could actually, like, weigh the situation, like pros and cons. Give consent. Understand what it actually means. But she is ill, and she wants to be this flower. She wants to be, like, painting flowers on her, I think, for her, gets her closer to that state where no one can touch her. And he is luring her, he's using that, luring her into a situation that is completely the opposite of what she wants. What did we start talking about? I just got upset.
No, but I mean, there's a movie also that was made in 2009 that is based on this book. And I was quite disappointed with this particular scene. But, or I don't know if I was actually disappointed and more just like, do I have to go through this shit again? This feeling of disgust. And it was like a trauma that was caused on me that I had to relive once again.
I mean, I saw the movie as well. And the reason that I didn't like it was because I think that, I mean, in the book, even though Young-hee never says anything herself, you still constantly have kind of a sense of where she is and how she's treated and what happens to her, how she feels. In the movie, I think she was forgotten. She was almost like a supporting character to her own story. In the book, that is portrayed, like, symbolically, which enhances this kind of, like, yeah, she is a suppressed woman. But in the movie, it becomes more of a reality than a symbol. I mean, the husband isn't portrayed very much, and the sister isn't either. It's more about her brother-in-law, right? So it becomes more of his show.
Even more.
Yeah, even more than it. It feels like it's trying to explain his point of view even more. Like, I don't think that... Well, of course it needs explaining, but, like, not justifying. Explaining, but not justifying.
I feel like that character, if it came out that if he was a real person, and that character came out as, like, oh, he has done molka, then I wouldn't be surprised. I mean...
Agree.
That he had, like, a USB with 8,000 panty pictures. I wouldn't be...
From a bus stop.
Yeah. Ew. And then he did Photoshop afterwards with flowers, like, on the butt cheeks or something, and then call it art.
And that kind of skin imperfection, like, right there. Yeah.
That is also not consensual, so... Whatever.
Why am I thinking about this?
Well, Another thing that I thought about when reading the book was, like, how important the reader's understanding of Korean culture is in order to sort of get this book, or not understand it, but at least doesn't think it's completely crazy. Because obviously the main theme of the book is a woman living in a very conservative patriarchal society, and, like, how she, through her behavior of, like, rebellion against the Korean culture is trying to obtain autonomy and self-expression. And if you don't understand from the beginning as a reader that Korean society is very patriarchal and conservative, and that food is such a huge thing in Korean culture, then you're just gonna think this novel is extremely bizarre and upsetting and violent.
But then not also like just food, but meat as well.
Yeah, meat and fish and just... And also the family's reaction to Hyung-jae becoming a vegetarian would seem really extreme in a Western perspective, because like becoming a vegetarian isn't like that big of a deal.
At least in Sweden.
Yeah.
People do symbolize a lot of, or like connect food to certain like traditional values and stereotypes, like you know the like the soy boy expression, and like how milk for some reason has become a symbol of masculinity in, or like at least like right masculinity in America. So I mean, I think it's difficult to say like that in West generally becoming a vegetarian is not a big deal. But at least like in Sweden, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Because like every restaurant has a vegetarian option. Even like there is a kind of a famous like chain of meat restaurants in Sweden that even like serves vegan options. So not a big deal. If you identify your core values and your identity with how you eat, of course it's going to stir up emotions. But I think that's also like why like the closing paragraph is about this, like because Young-hee's sister is sitting in the car or on the bus and thinking about like dreams, that in dreams everything seems so important and so real, and when you wake up it doesn't matter at all.
I just wanted to say two things. First of all, as you said, that like food is such a huge part of culture and that is like important. I feel like Sweden has not a very strong food culture.
No.
Like food isn't important at all. Like a lot of food come and go in like trends in Sweden.
And it's difficult to go out and find a restaurant that serves traditional Swedish food.
Yeah, because what is traditional Swedish food? I don't even know.
Husmanskost.
Yeah, but...
Like kåldolmar, stekt strömming. Wouldn't you say that? Sill.
I don't know. That is one of the things that I like about Korean culture, that it is very different to Sweden in terms of like food, that they take great pride in their food. Sweden is kind of quite boring in that sense. And also nothing tastes anything other than like salt and pepper.
I mean, it would probably be because Sweden is like very close to the North Pole and it's difficult to grow things. And traditional food comes from before like massive globalization.
But growing a big ego, no.
That we managed before. Yeah, I mean, I read a lot about like the construction of nationality in Sweden, so I'm not gonna bore you with that. But like, basically, Swedish identity and Swedish national identity is very much built on comparing with others.
Yeah,
that Swedish people won't just on top of their heads know how to define Swedishness unless they are kind of put in a situation with someone from another culture. Then it becomes very clear. what we define as Swedish and not. So it's not as much about things as comparing.
Yeah. I listened to this podcast where they were talking about like nationalism in Sweden, and that they came up with their own word for it, which is like big dick nationalism. Like, nationalists in Sweden are not like, or nationalism isn't like hysterically waving a Swedish flag and being like, yay, Sweden is the best. We don't have to, because we know that ours is the biggest. We know that there's no competition. We don't even have to compare, because it's like in the Swedish soul in a way that we know that we do things better, which is like really not
horrible.
It's really horrible, but it is sort of true.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so.
Which is awful.
Someone said to me that like foreign diplomats think that the Swedish diplomats are the worst because they never say what they actually think. Yeah. They just say what everyone else wants, like what they think that everyone else wants them to say. No, it feels like it's in line with that, doesn't it?
But I mean, if you want good relationship between nations, then why should you like express your opinion, your personal opinion? Just say what the other people want you to say, and then.
But diplomacy is very much on like personal connections, and like you form a deeper relationship with someone if you're genuine than if you just like paying lip service all the time.
I mean, if that other person is genuine and I genuinely hate their opinion, then there's not going to be a strong relationship. But I mean, it's genuine in some way, but not in a good way.
Good to know where you stand. I mean, I haven't said what I think about video art, so do you want to like cut off this relationship right now?
You love video art.
Love it, no. It's the only thing I do with my spare time. I also paint flowers on myself.
Ew, no, I'm not gonna say that.
Yes, you're gonna say that.
If it's gonna be like if there's a genre in erotic movies that people have sex with plants,
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
That is really not consensual. My friend sent me an article about a woman that got married to her chandelier, and she just wrote me, "Well, you don't give a shit about consent."
It's a growing concern. It's a societal issue. But also, like, this is kind of a long shot, but my friend's friend worked at the cinemas when 50 Shades of Grey aired, and she was like, this is the worst, this has been the worst like year to work at the cinemas. And she was American, so this was in America. Just want to point that out, because she said that every time you have to clean up afterwards, there will be like cucumbers and zucchinis on the floor.
Yeah. What? No. Ew.
So, I mean, there is certainly like a porn genre for having sex with plants. I'm not going to find it for you. You're going to have to do that yourself.
But what the hell? Why did they bring...
Do you have to ask?
A cucumber? Why didn't you just bring a sex toy?
True.
And then just put it in your bag and take it with you when you leave?
But maybe it's like it's America, so it's like
why do you leave it
suppressed
behind? That's super weird.
sexualism. Like sexuality is suppressed, so it's easier to go to the supermarket and buy a zucchini than it is to go to like a sex store.
Holy cow. Or did they search their bags beforehand? Because in America they can like bring guns and stuff. So they were like, what are you gonna do with that cucumber? Oh, I'm gonna eat it. It's my
I always
snack.
do that to every cinema. I have my I have my soda, I have my popcorn, and I have my cucumber. Let's snack.
Okay, can we move on?
Of course.
We're gonna talk about this novel from a man's perspective. Because, like, if you look at the male characters in this book and compare it to the male lead in a K-drama, there's, like, a spectra of, like, greatness.
Assholery.
Yeah, that you can put men on, from one extreme, which is, like, a god that does nothing wrong and that protects women at all costs, which is, like, the male character in K-drama, and then we have the...
But those as well are kind of misogynist.
Yeah, but...
in their own way.
Yeah. But don't spoil my theory here. And then
sorry.
On the other end, we have the complete scumbags and rapists and egocentric pigs, and those are the men that are in this novel. And obviously none of these are a correct representation of the Korean man. I mean, I don't live in Korea and I don't know many Korean men, so this is my input.
Did I tell you about the word that that my friend taught me the other week? She's Korean. She's like, you're gonna love this. So there's a word called Hannam, which is like an abbreviation for Hanguk Namcha.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like it's not nice to be called a Hannam. It's like, I would say in Swedish it would be like calling someone a mansgris.
Okay, so a male pig.
Or like a man's man.
Okay.
Like
yeah. So that is a man that is like, has a character that is very like conservative, old day Korean culture-ish, or
macho male. Yeah.
But it is confusing for someone from the outside to look at these two K-dramas and like this novel and sort of make up an image of what a Korean man is like. Also, like, if I were a man and read The Vegetarian, I will feel extremely disrespected. Because, I mean, all the male characters in Hyungjae's life lack empathy, and they only see her as like a housemaid or a cook or a body that they can, rape or use for inspiration for some shitty video art. And if I were a Korean man reading this, I would be like, is this the internet, the image that is going to be spread about me internationally? I would feel upset. Because, I mean, obviously all Korean men aren't like this. That would be insane.
It has to come from somewhere. I don't think that she just, like, made this issue up. So, I mean, the problem exists. There is a problem with men who use women in this way in Korean society, in like every society on the planet, probably.
Yeah.
So there are men like this in Korea, and if there are men who read this book and react in the way that you said, then that's just good. Then that's like, I want all men to react like that. That like, oh, this isn't me, and is this the way we are portrayed to the world? I don't want that. Because then I think that people would start to think like, well, how are we gonna fight this? I mean, since it's a problem.
Like, this is not how I want women to think of me, so I need to change somehow. And also my fellow brothers need to change.
Yeah, I mean, because even if you don't do these kinds of things, if you're just keeping it to if you're not actively speaking to people about why you think that this is bad, and why other people shouldn't do it, then those people who do it won't pick up on why it's wrong, because they're doing it so they don't understand that it's wrong.
I mean, I have a Korean friend that studied literature at university, and she said that, I don't know exactly when they had this discussion, but they read the book anyway, and they had a discussion like in a seminar, and that there were male students, Korean male students, that got really upset by this book, but not because of the way that men were represented or depicted, but they were upset with Jung-hye, that she was so selfish for not listening to her husband and her father when they told her that she should eat meat. And that makes me a bit sad, to be honest.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
But then again, I think I said this to you when I read it as well, that I think people need to read it with someone else to discuss it with, because I mean, these guys, I would guess that they didn't understand the full.
They completely misunderstood the takeaway of the book.
And that she was very, very ill, and why she had gotten to that stage, because she had been, like, her whole personality and identity had been suppressed, even like since she was a child.
Yeah.
And been taught that that was okay. And then that resulted in her like having a psychosis, because she couldn't handle her will to not be suppressed and the society telling her otherwise. And I mean, the book does a very good job showing that, discussing that. But if you don't understand that is the issue that will be discussed from the get-go, then it's not going to do anything for you. And also, like, if you have been raised in that kind of environment where these kind of conservative thoughts are okay and practiced and reproduced, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to pick it up yourself.
Yeah.
You kind of need someone to discuss it with, to see it from different angles.
I mean, another thing that makes it sort of difficult to use this book in an argument or a discussion regarding women's role in the patriarchy is that, like, the situation that Hongtae is in is like so extreme that it almost becomes a freak show. Like, men and women, like you said, that are not aware of the problems with the patriarchy and a patriarchal society, they're not going to be able to understand this book, because, like, if a Korean woman is not going to be like, oh yeah, I have nightmares too. I also want to become a tree. My partner also needs to paint flowers on me in order for me to consent to sex. Yay, I identify so much with this main character. I see myself in her. Like, the situation that Hyungjae is in is so extreme that it becomes weird. And I almost feel like Han Kang is like sexualizing almost sexualizing like mentally ill women and vulnerable women. And it makes me feel kind of sick and makes me feel very uneasy. But I mean, maybe the point of the book is to trigger, discuss, and so on, but in women and not men. Like, maybe the book is targeted towards the female reader. Maybe the point is for a female reader to feel used and sexualized and disgusted, and that rage is going to be like, those feelings is going to be what starts a change.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, because I don't know if I told you, but also I met a Korean woman. She's just like my age. And we were listening to we were like showing each other music, and I showed her a Veronica Maggio song, like Havanna Mama, which is a song about a woman who gets fed up with her life, and especially her husband, who is so lazy and just uses her like a housekeeper, basically. So she saves up and she goes to Havana and starts to live her life there instead. And I told that to this girl, and she said that, whoa, that's such a bad mother. She's such a bad mother. So obviously we had very different perspectives on this, and we did like discuss it. And so I mean, I think you might have something there that it could be directed to Korean conservative women.
And if you're a man, you need sort of guidance when you're going to analyze this.
Maybe a woman would need that too, because maybe they wouldn't recognize that. I mean, some would, but not everyone would recognize like the conflict between, like, if you've lived in a certain way for a very long time, you can have difficulties to like point out the problems with it. I don't know if I made
No, but like you're so involved in the issue that it's hard to get like an overview picture, like a helicopter view of society. I mean, it's the same thing. Swedish society has a lot of issues too that we don't see because we're in the middle of all the crap.
But then like, so for them to recognize themselves in like this internal struggle that Young-hee has might be difficult as well. That's what I meant. Like, because if they haven't felt like there is anything, that there is a conflict, maybe they are quite happy living the way they want, then you can't recognize that this person doesn't feel well living according to the norm.
Yeah.
And if you can't, like, even if you are comfortable living according to the norm, I think you could still understand why others wouldn't. But if you can't even do that, then I think the novel would just be annoying.
Maybe this is a good book for your and Mark's book club.
I mean, it's on the list. It's I still haven't looked up the translation in English, the andra könet. The second gender, the other gender, whatever. Simone de Beauvoir is like at the top, and then we have the vegetarian. Do we have anything else like that comes to mind? Oh, I read it was so upsetting. It was really good. It's called White Chrysanthemum. It's about comfort women. That's on the list.
Mark is gonna get a reality check.
I think he's gonna enjoy himself. I mean, who doesn't enjoy a bit of discussion?
Okay, so to summarize today, how do you feel?
I feel like a tree. No, I don't.
You wish.
More, yeah.
Actually, one thing about trees, there's obviously a thing about hugging trees, that there's like a good flow of energy or whatever is supposed to be good for you to hug trees.
Bah.
Yes. And I saw...
You can't just say yes. It's like, what do you mean?
Oh,
Like
it is.
that
To like connect
the energy from the tree would
Yes.
flow into you.
Yes. You have never heard about this? Is this too hippie for you?
No, is that in the same like booklet on crystals and
Probably.
auras and ascending star signs that I haven't read about?
Okay, anyway, it's good to hug trees. And I saw a man in the forest that was like, because I was on a walk, and he tried to make it look as if he was stretching against the tree. Like he was on a jogging. He was jogging and then he just stopped to do stretching. But I could tell that he was hugging the tree. And I was like, man, own it. Why are you trying to disguise it as stretching? Just hug that tree.
Maybe you'll find him in that like niche porn section.
Ew. I mean, it was a year ago since I read this novel, and throughout this year I've had sort of feelings of disgust and sickness because of this novel, like coming and going, and now I feel like I'm reliving it again. Like, this novel is good because it causes a very strong physical and mental reaction in me, but I don't want it anymore.
So do you think that you can let it go after this? Like that this was some kind of shock therapy?
We'll see. One thing that I got out of it though was, I got a lot of things out of it, but I also learned the word kabuchanche from doing a book review in Korean class of The Vegetarian. Kabuk-chanche means the patriarchy.
I know. Your book review was inspiring.
No, it wasn't. Basically, I just said that I'm glad I read this book, but I'm never going to read it again.
I mean, what I like the most about The Vegetarian is that Han Kang is a very skillful author. So if I were to read it again, I would probably notice something different.